Right. Well, welcome to the Elephant in the Room. It's me, Anthony B. again. This time I got a different guest. Last week I had DJ.
Okay.
This is. I keep wanting to call you Isla Fisher.
You're not the first, and I suppose that's a compliment, right?
Well, it is, and I did once. I remember when I was doing the show with you. Well, actually, when I was doing one of the shows for you, and I did Isla, and I said Isla, I was stepping in for Isla Fisher, and then only after I'd finished, I was like, wait a minute, that's nice. It's Jeffers, and I was like, whoops. I was like, well, at least I made you famous for a show. It's like,
yeah, that is my 1 second of fame. Thank you.
Yeah, Isla Fisher. There we go. Well, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
And you're most welcome. We're talking about consent today.
Okay.
Now, the show or the podcast that I do, it's based around sort of the elephant in the room. So it's the things that people generally think about, but generally are too, I don't know, they don't want to speak about it because it's, the controversy or whatever the case. The elephant
kind
in the
of
room.
taboo stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
Literally the elephant in the room.
Yes.
I tried to get a physical elephant near once. I didn't think it would fit.
Did you?
Yeah.
Do you remember on Top Gear, the final Top Gear, when Jeremy Clarkson was fired and the two boys did the show?
Yeah.
And they had an enormous elephant in the background that they never referred to.
Oh, no.
It was great. Yeah, it was great.
Oh, man, I got to watch that episode. That's after all that stuff happened with him.
Yes. So when you say elephant in the room, that's what I'm thinking of, is the elephant on Top Gear.
I have no problem being associated with Top Gear at all. I think Top Gear is awesome. So today we're going to be talking about consent.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I want to talk about consent is because there's a couple of things that have been going on. There was a case that happened, I think it was a few months ago. Was it a few months ago? A year ago or something? But it was fairly recent.
Okay.
And then there's another case that's going on at the moment. But obviously, they've highlighted the whole issue of consent. But obviously, it's been an ongoing issue for a long time. And especially towards women, it kind of, which is why I wanted to get a woman in, because if you have two guys sitting here talking about consent, it's kind of like, it's nice to get the other side of the spectrum.
Yeah.
And I think what's got me wanting to talk about this particular topic was exactly what was going on at the moment with this case. Now, a lot of people, I'm guessing, who'd be listening to the podcast wouldn't probably know, because it's very local. It's to Ireland, and this usually goes.
Tell us about the case, Anthony.
So there's two cases. So the one in the past was based on the fact that this woman got assaulted, and then the judge did the whole thing, went through the whole usual rigmarole, and then at the end of the day, basically threw it out and said that the reason why he's throwing it out is that she was pretty much asking for the assault to happen based on the underwear that she was wearing. Yeah. And obviously there was a massive outcry, and people were going to the streets. I remember there was one girl that posted on Facebook. She went and stood pretty much naked in the middle of Cork City. If you don't know, we were based in Ireland, and she had some sign up and saying, I'm standing here like this. This is the kind of clothing that very scantily clad, if you want to put it that way. And with that, had signs all over her saying, "So I'm dressed like this. Does that mean I'm asking for it? Does it mean I'm asking to be assaulted? I'm asking to be
powerful
raped and stuff."
Statement.
So it kind of was that, and then, which I understood. Have a case thrown out of court because of the underwear that someone was wearing. And I've always
Was it a red thong? Am I remembering that right? And did it go around the courtroom or something?
I think so. Yes, you're right. Yeah.
I think it did. It was controversial.
That's the whole thing. And to me, I've always been on that side of the things. I'm always like, you know what? I do agree that because I moved here from Cape Town, and so Cape Town, yes, we do. There are certain things we do and stuff like that, but I think we are still fairly conservative. So when I moved over here, I just my very first day here, just seeing some of the outfits that some of the ladies were wearing, it was pretty mind blowing. I've got to say.
You're talking about the going out for the evening.
This wasn't even going out for the evening. This was summertime.
Yeah.
And there was, I remember distinctly, because my first day I landed in Dublin, and my first day I met up with a friend of mine, an American friend of mine, who was nice enough to meet up with me and show me around for a bit. And we're walking through Dublin, and I remember there was this girl walking in front of me, and she had these shorts on. If you could call them that.
Yeah.
They were so short that, half of her backside was basically, and I just couldn't believe it. I was walking like, my word, you know.
Yeah.
So I kind of got this eye opener of, and then I started seeing it was summertime, and then the evening wear as well. I was kind of like, wow, this is crazy. It's like I wouldn't see this kind of thing back home.
And I think as women, very often we're not aware of how the visual stimulates men.
It does,
and you know, it even comes up in secondary schools, doesn't it, with the length of the skirts.
Yes.
And mixed schools where poor lads are supposed to be concentrating on maths, and there's a girl sitting beside them with their legs, you know, to die for. And let's not forget the young male teachers as well.
Yes.
I think we're not as aware of that as we should be.
And funny you talk about teachers, because I remember an experience, and I think a lot of women to a certain degree are aware of it. I'll put it into context for you. So I was at school, and yes, we were always told, you know, the guy's hairline had to be above your eyebrows.
Hairline above the eyebrows, really?
We had to like, they literally took rulers and they would make sure.
No.
And if your hair wasn't above sort of the eyebrows, a certain a line, you would actually get sent home to get a haircut.
So it was the length of the hair, and was it the length of the skirt?
Length of the skirts.
Oh, so they were big into the rulers.
Yes. And I remember there was this one girl in my class. Her name was Cindy Sullivan.
Are you out there, Cindy?
Not anymore. She's not. Well, she's back home probably somewhere. But
she might be listening, Anthony. She might be listening.
Yeah. She just happens to tune into a Spotify podcast. And like, oh, what the heck? I'm not famous. Yeah, you are. And she had a very short dress. But I also remember the one day she went up to the front of the class, asked the teacher, who happened to be a guy, fairly younger guy as well. I think he was 20, so he was one of the newer teachers. And she went up to ask him a question. But she's kind of, while she was doing it, and we knew what she was doing, and she knew what she was doing, because everybody was watching. Yeah, we were all watching her.
Yeah.
And she kind of leans over the desk, the front of the teacher, and she asks him a question, but she keeps leaning in. And this poor guy he was just, you could see he didn't know where to look. Yeah. He was kind of looking, and we had the two front row, like the front, and then the rows just behind them. They were just having a good laugh about this whole situation. So there is sort of that undertone as well. It's like kind of like, it's almost like a power, you know, when they try and use that.
It's very manipulative.
It can be. But as you say, it's again how I think women often forget that for guys, the way we're wired up, yes, we are very visual, and so that kind of stuff does come up. That being said, though, I've always been of the mind, and especially walking around the city over here, looking in the evenings, and you see some of the outfits, I'm like, what are you wearing, or what are you not wearing?
Yeah,
pretty much.
I agree.
But at the same time, I also, as much as I agree that, you know what, if you don't want to be looked at in a certain way, then maybe you shouldn't be wearing that. And if you do get looked at, you can't complain, because you are going to draw attention. But that being said, that also doesn't give a guy that's not now license or right to say, well, now you can touch this person and you can grope this person and you can do whatever you want with this person, because they're still a person.
Yeah.
They're not a piece of meat.
Piece of meat, yeah.
And
in a world where pornography is so massive, women are becoming pieces of meat.
Exactly.
In the eyes of men who are watching a lot of pornography, and it's so damaging.
It is. And the problem with that as well is if you and I find this at home, and I don't know if it happens here, but I know a lot of what was going on is at home is certain acts are acted out, and then if they go back far enough, they sort of go into the history of it, and they, you know, whoever the person was involved or whatever the case might be, they more often than not find that there was pornography involved, and that often there's certain acts that are happening in the movies that they watched, and so they replicated or they recreated, thinking, well, it's okay because it happened in the movie, so it must be okay for me to do it, because if women are doing this in pornography, well, then they must be okay with doing it with other women. Yeah.
So then it raises the or maybe lowers is the better word, the expectation of what it means to date, what's expected from both the guy but also the girl. If she's thinking, well, this is what it means to be a woman, this is what I need to do to keep a guy, and it's extremely unhealthy.
It is. I mean, and this is pretty hectic. Like, I was in a primary school for a year. I was one of the computer administrators, and then sort of by default I became the computer teacher, because the computer teacher just didn't show up.
I didn't know you were a teacher.
Well, just for a year. And so I was probably one of the youngest teachers at the time. I think I was
Mr.
20.
Bradshaw.
Yes. Took some getting used to. But it was kind of cool on the other side of it. I was like, yes, that's it.
Power.
And so, yeah, exactly. And it was weird because I'm in charge of like an entire classroom. I'm like, sit down, quiet, don't eat, don't do this, don't chew gum, all that kind of stuff.
You.
But I was one of the youngest ones. So I was 20, 22, 23.
Oh, wow.
But I wasn't officially a teacher. I was still the computer administrator.
Yeah, okay.
So I was just doing this because for some reason the computer teacher didn't show up. But anyway, and what started happening was because I wasn't classified as a teacher, and so a lot of the kids, because I was teaching grade 7s, so they were like 11, 12, 13 years old, around about that age. I had a few of the girls coming and talking to me about stuff that was going on with them and how do I deal with this, and a couple of guys. And so I felt the students obviously felt like they could talk to me, which was fine. I didn't have a problem with that. I kind of slipped in a few of my little Christian values in there without them realizing, which was great. But I do remember one girl coming to me one day, just after class ended, and she said, "Can I speak to you for a second?" I was like, "Yeah, sure." And she's like, "So I have this problem." She didn't go into too much detail, but I kind of got the gist of it. I still couldn't believe, and it probably still happens today, is that guys still use this line, he basically wanted to sleep with her. Yeah. And I was like, no. And she's like, well, I don't know. And I was like, no, that's not a question. It's not a thought. No. And she goes, oh, but he said to me, like, he thought, like, if you love me, and I was like, I still said, I was like, what, guys are still using that line? And she's like, yeah. He was like, if you love me, then, you'll do what I want to do and stuff. And I was like, that's ridiculous. I was like, if you've got a guy who's asking you to do this stuff now and he's using that line on you, then you shouldn't be dating him because he doesn't respect you. And she was then coming online saying, but I don't want to lose him and stuff. And so like you're saying, it's kind of like you feel I have to do certain things. And I mean, this is primary school.
Oh, that's
so gosh, I'm kind of shocking. I'm going, what? You shouldn't even be thinking of this. Shouldn't even be any kind of a thought.
They're only kids.
But yet, I mean, it got me thinking, if it's happening at that young of an age, it's already sort of a grooming process to when you get older, you've already got this indoctrination in your mind of like, well, I need to perform or behave a certain way in order to keep my man or keep this person happy. Yeah. And I just like that for me is ridiculous. Yeah. So,
and it's not a loving relationship.
No, it's not. It's literally just a physical thing. The guy gets what he wants. And more often than not, and this is another thing I said to which I think helped was I said, realize this, once he gets from you what he wants, he will most likely move on to the next person.
That's it.
And then use that same line on someone else.
That's right.
So, what do you want to do? Do you want to just be another notch in someone's belt, or do you actually want to do, have respect for yourself?
Yeah. So, and don't get us wrong. Like, we're not saying sex is a bad idea.
No.
Sex is one of God's best ideas.
Absolutely.
In a loving, supportive marriage relationship. Yeah. But not this manipulative, physical.
It shouldn't be.
No.
If there's manipulation involved, then it has to be consensual, for one thing, but also within the right context. Obviously, in our case, we believe within a marriage context, which makes sense because I think a lot of people look at sort of from a godly perspective. They look at God and they go, well, he's just boring. He's just an old fuddy-duddy. He just wants to make everything super restrictive. And it's like, a lot of people forget or don't realize that the reason why it was put in that particular context was to protect us, not to protect himself. He doesn't need to protect himself. He's good to go. But it's to protect us from, accidents happening, as people like to call it. Something happened, someone falls pregnant or whatever the case might be, and there's no, especially at young ages, especially nowadays, you get like 15, 16, 17-year-olds falling pregnant, and then it's like, what do I do? There's no financial support. I'm not there's no kind of fixed relationship.
That's right.
Well, half the time they probably don't even know each other.
But it's not just pregnancy.
Well,
it's sexually transmitted infections. Now, you go down that road, that is a horrific road. I'm not going to go into it, but I used to teach sexual health, and I had some interesting pictures, let's say.
Imagine.
Make your hair curl.
I can imagine. Speaking of that, I mean, I found as well, especially from an AIDS point of view, I just find that a lot of people just seem to discard it or just sort of move on from it. They don't really think about it anymore. It's almost like people think it doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, that's right. And it was so huge in the 80s.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, like it was across the board, wasn't it? Ad campaigns.
And it's still just as bad.
Oh, yeah.
It's just that people tend to take less notice of it for some reason.
Yeah.
It's almost like they think it's gone, but it's still there.
Yeah.
But, so I kind of felt like I wanted to talk about it because there is sort of this whole stigma out there, and it's not, and unfortunately, I'm not going to say this is not a blanket statement, but guys generally can be the biggest issue because we're the ones who are, to a certain degree, are setting the tone as well, saying, this is what a woman needs to do. This is how she needs to perform. This is all this kind of stuff is coming, and it's bombarding. Now, I'm not saying women are innocent and that they don't play any part in it.
No, not at all.
But at the same time, if you have women out there thinking, I need to do certain things to keep my relationship going, to keep my man happy, or whatever the case might be, who's setting that tone? Who's setting that expectation?
Yeah, and I think that there's an important exercise for us in determining where our own boundaries are and need to be set before ever you're in the heat of the moment where it's actually very difficult then to call a halt.
Yeah.
I was watching the Tommy Tiernan show the other night, and he was interviewing a woman called Angela Scanlon, who runs
name sounds familiar.
Cuddle parties. Now, I heard the word. I thought, what
cuddle
is
parties?
This? Cuddle parties. It's completely non-sexual.
Okay.
I think they're about a 2 or 3 hour thing, and her thing is about consent and boundaries.
Okay.
And so it's very much about determining where your own boundaries are.
Yeah.
And then her thing was, so for a guy, if the girl is saying, come on the hell, to read that. But then when she says, come on, stop the hell, no, then that's what you do. Get the hell back.
Yes.
So no means no. And this isn't just about respect. That's really important. But guys, like, if you're going to get an allegation of rape against you, be it true or not, that's going to follow you for the rest of your life. That's going to turn up on your guard of vetting when you go for your new job. That's going to be there. It's going to follow you. So it's as important for guys and for girls to decide on those boundaries and understand about, no means no.
Speaking of when you were saying now about be careful because whatever charge gets put, regardless of whether or not you get proven innocent, or it still sits, it's there.
Yeah.
And I remember there was an article about a teacher who got there was an allegation put against him for rape or something. He was basically some female student that had laid an allegation against him. It then turned out later that he was actually innocent.
Yeah.
But it didn't matter.
Yeah.
Because at that point onwards, his life was pretty much, in the sense of a teaching career, was over.
Yes.
Because even though he was innocent, next time he went for an interview anywhere, the question was come up, why did you leave your last post? Or why were you, relieved of your last post? And obviously that has to come up, and more than likely it's in the records anyway, so they would know. And so regardless of him saying, oh, but I was actually innocent, it also, even if the principal or the teachers or whatever got past it and said, okay, well, the guy was innocent, you got parents to contend with as well. Because parents straight away go like, hey, they think of the first allegation, maybe they do print a retraction, maybe the newspaper does put an article in there saying the guy was innocent, but more often than not, the retractions or anything like that end up being the smallest part of the newspaper, something that's not going to make a massive headline.
Yeah, that's right.
Because, bad news sells. You're not going to put good news in a little bit. So parents automatically are going to go, hey, hang on a sec. Wasn't this guy that got... no, we don't want him anywhere near our kids and stuff. Oh, but he's innocent. Yeah. No, I don't want to take the chance.
Yeah.
And so, unfortunately, that kind of sticks.
Yeah, so for fellas then, it's about not putting yourself in that kind of danger and being very sure when you're in a relationship that it definitely is yes.
Yeah.
Constantly checking, because if you just project yourself forward into that scenario that you've just painted, I mean, that is a life-changing allegation.
I always remember, I thought it was quite funny as well, Keanu Reeves.
Yeah.
I seen a couple of pictures of him on Instagram and Facebook or whatever, and someone had posted, I thought it was pretty good, they showed photos of him being taken with like other women and stuff, and every time he's in a photo with them, he's got his arms around them, but you see whoever did it, like they picked the photos and then they'd circle like his hands.
Yeah.
And so every time he's in a photo, his hands are like this. His hands are open away from their bodies.
He's not touching them.
And he's not touching them. And then you got I don't know if it was a guy or whoever it was, but had circled the hands and saying, see, there's a guy who's clever. So like no lawsuit, no nothing. They can't touch him because he didn't do anything. He wasn't touching them. And several photos you see him, even with his hands around around them, on their waists, whether it's on their shoulders, his hands are always up and away from their bodies. So I thought he's
a smart guy.
He's a smart guy.
Yeah, he is.
Because, especially nowadays if you're a famous person, somebody will come out of the woodworks. Maybe you weren't famous before. Now you are famous. Now everyone comes at the woodwork going, oh, this happened, that happened, etc. Yeah. So I'm kind of like, you have to be careful.
Absolutely. And again, we're not saying don't touch it. I mean, hugs are great. But again, it's consensual. And I think as well, something about personal distance, Anthony. Yeah. I've got freaked out a couple of times by men who seem to insist on standing too close. Oh, I hate that.
How close is close?
Well, I think that depends on the person. And then go back to Angela Scanlon and her cuddle party, who is working those things out. Yeah. I think the way she does it is then they have time going around the room offering hugs to people. And she said it's quite empowering for one person who maybe decides they don't want to be touched at all to just sit to one side and keep saying, no, thank you. No, thank you. Especially if they have been violated themselves in some way. Yeah. So I think that's really important. Yeah, but I don't know. You were talking about the ruler with the hair now. I don't know about ruler with distance. But like if they're within, how much is that? Like 2 feet? That's too close, I think, unless you're in a more intimate relationship. I'm thinking of one person in particular recently who I'd never met before.
And got right up in there,
huh? Gave me the willies. Like I didn't like it. I don't like it. My other personal. Here we go. Now I get on my soapbox. The thing I don't like. You know the whole man-spreading thing, Anthony.
Man-spreading.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
No.
Now I don't know if it's an anatomical thing, right, with men, but you know the way you like to sit with your legs wide open.
Oh, that.
And I've had experience of sitting beside a gentleman doing that, whose leg was completely in my space, my space. That's weird. Yeah, that's how I felt too.
No, that's There obviously, guys, we do feel a certain freedom.
Yeah.
But I think if you're Anthony, stretching over into someone else's space, that's a little bit
Anthony,
weird.
Did I say anything to him? No, I didn't.
Okay.
And
why not?
Because he was respectable and he was quite old.
Okay.
And do you know what? I think of myself as a confident person. Mm-hmm. I'm assertive. I didn't open my mouth. Do you know what I actually did? I left and I went home early.
Serious?
Yeah. What's wrong with us as women?
Do you know what I think? It's a combination of, like we said before, the whole grooming process of as you get older, it's kind of like the culture. But I think it's also nowadays has got a lot to do with the whole PC side of things. Yeah. What you can and can't say, who you're going to offend. And people are too scared to just talk about or speak their minds, or say, I'm not comfortable with this.
Yeah. And I couldn't say that.
Yeah?
I couldn't say that.
You regret it now or what?
I do. But I think maybe if I'd sat back beforehand and done, if I could take my own advice, folks, that'd be great. To sit back and think, what am I comfortable with? What are my boundaries here? Yeah. And just even to be able to, what could I have said? Excuse me, could you move over a bit?
Close your legs a bit.
Could you just give me a bit of space here?
Oh, my word.
Didn't do it. I went home early.
Oh, that's heavy, man.
Eat it.
Well, now you'll know for next time.
I know.
Next time you'll be like, hey, get into your own space, buddy.
But certain men, there's a power around them. Speaking as a woman. Yeah. And I think that can be intimidating.
Okay.
But what you're sharing as well there is that can be the same with women. I'm certainly not stereotyping men here as the bad eggs in this, because you're talking about that girl leaning over the desk. Yeah. I think like we certainly are I mean, I said earlier, we're not aware as we should be of how powerful the visual is for men.
Let's just say some are more aware than others.
That's better. Yeah, that's actually better. So then to manipulate men like that, I mean, that's not respectful either.
Well, I mean, it's, I guess, it, you know, as I always say, like, it seems to be like a power play, or just the balance of power between the sexes, I guess, you know, when using it as a power play. And I think if you go back to, you were talking about like pornography and how guys are watching it, and obviously the more that you watch it, the more, they were actually saying it chemically changes your brain. It literally is like a drug. The more and more, and this isn't, people always like, it's just the Christian people jumping on, again, on their soapbox or whatever they're trying. But it's from a secular point of view. They've now proved it, and they've gone more and more, they're more and more into it. A lot of secular people are going, hang on a sec, there is something up here. So that's a good thing too, because they're kind of becoming aware of it. But in that same breath, it's like there are porn stars, especially women from a woman's side, are saying, you know, it's a power play. You know, they feel like they're in control of the guy because of what they can and can't do. And so, but to me, it's almost like it's a false sense of power, because again, the guy, I mean, depending on whatever they're watching or however it's going, and I think that washes over into, if the guy's watching this, and women too, because there's a lot more women watching it now as well.
That's right.
Women watching it and going, this is how it's going to be. Guys watching this and going, hey, I've got power over this person because of whatever. And so, which is why these things happen. A lot of these things happen, and these scenarios get played out because they're like, hey, happens in there, it must be like this in the real world. And the lines, it's kind of like when you're watching your favorite soapy. Yeah. You know, and you walk up to like the actor who just dumped the girl, or vice versa, and kind of like, you know, slapping them in the face and going, how dare you dump this person? And you're like, I'm just an actor. That's not really me.
I know,
You know, there's like those lines get blurred.
Exactly.
So I think it's the same thing with this stuff. You know, the more you get involved in that, and I think a lot of that, and this again, back to that with that courtroom with the judge going, she was asking for it, kind of thing. It's that goes back to all of that as well, and especially now and the reason as well was like, so there's a court case going on at the moment, which looks like it's heading in the same direction. It looks like the judge his mindset and the words that he's using they look like they're heading in the same direction as what the other guy was with. She was pretty much asking for it. And I was and then to tell a courtroom or to tell a jury that they need to take all human emotion out of this, I'm thinking, there's a bunch of humans sitting, we're all human. It's like, we are emotional. And he's saying you got to take all emotion, all feeling, everything out of it. I'm like, but you can't. It's impossible.
You can't. It is impossible. I suppose maybe he's trying to get them to be as objective as they can, but it's a highly emotive case.
It is.
But I think, you know, that phrase, she was asking for it, is loaded as well with emotion, isn't it? And okay, let's say maybe she was asking for it. Maybe she did go out with the intention of having sex with that guy. But when the point comes when she says no, that's when it stops.
But no means yes, either.
Never means yes.
She said no, but her eyes were saying yes.
If she says no and you continue, that is statutory rape.
Yeah, absolutely.
So no means no. But I think then for men, that's very hard. If that's your goal, if you've got the come on, and then she says no, it's like, you don't mean that. And I'm thinking about
you see that in movies.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And there's actually a good example of how powerless men become in that situation.
Because your brain kind of switches over.
Yeah. I saw again, social media, where would we be without it? A video of a couple working in pairs on the street. So a girl and a guy, right?
Yeah.
So the girl stood on the street and started taking her clothes off.
Okay.
And a gathering of men standing around her with their mouths hanging open and her body pickpocketing every single one of them.
Wow.
They weren't even aware of it.
That is heavy.
That's the power of sex, particularly on the male mind.
Yeah.
And how manipulative was that?
That's quite a system.
Oh, it's quite a system.
And it works.
Of course it works. because men becomes totally switched on to something else.
Yeah, they're not focused at all.
They saw nothing else. And she didn't strip naked or anything, you know, even like so a woman starting to take her clothes off, was like, oh, hang on a second. I think down to underwear or something. It doesn't matter.
Well, I mean, it's the prospect of what they thought they might see.
Yeah. They all lost their wallets.
My word. Yeah. I wonder if I would say they would teach them a lesson, but I don't know. You know,
and you see, God put that in men for a reason.
Yeah,
because otherwise probably there would be no children.
Yeah,
you know, when women are like, "Oh, listen, I've only just sat down, my head is splitting,
I got a headache."
And it's also designed that way, I think, for that's how we work together. Then. So for men to be able to manage that and for women to be able to embrace it, you know, it's a wonderful kind of
dynamic.
It is. And it's a very special way of loving each other. And of course, the ideal that we aim for is to get totally away from the selfish and focus so much on the other person's needs that you don't have to worry about your own, because you know that the other person will be looking at your needs.
Yeah.
But look, that's the aim, that's the goal, that's what we aim for.
It's a whole different topic. I could also spend a lot of time on marriage. I'm not even married, but I spent enough time when in the church I was at back home. I used to set up all the marriage programs and then sit in the back and watching all these things. And so eventually, even the guys leading the session, like they would come up to afterwards and they go, "Geez, you've been doing this like all the time. By this point, you should be like the perfect marriage partner because you've watched all of these videos." And it's a case of people getting, and I've seen this happen so many times, and people getting married and going, "This person's going to fulfill me. You know, I'm getting married because this person's going to make it all happen, and they're going to make me happy." And I'm like, well, if you're heading into marriage or any relationship for that fact, and you're heading into that going, it's all about how happy that person's going to make me, then I'm like, well, then your focus is completely in the wrong area. Because as you've just said, when you're getting married or whichever case, it's what you can do for the other person and vice versa. It's not the other way around.
Yeah.
And I think, again, in this case with sex, it's like, how happy are you going to make me? What are you going to do for me kind of thing? And I'm like, well, no, again, that needs to be flipped around.
It does.
And it's not. We've always become very it's very self-centered. The world we live in.
Selfie,
yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of things can be blamed for it. I mean, again, whether it's movies, whether it's the culture we live in, it doesn't give guys consent to do what they want.
No.
But it also doesn't give women the right or the consent to treat it as a weapon.
That's right.
And I mean, because you watch all these movies, like Hollywood movies, like half the time they're never married. They're not married.
No.
And it's just like, oh, we're having a one night stand, or it's like the first date, and here we go, and this is how it works. Yeah. Is this the third date? Okay, well, third date we do this. Sometimes it's the first date. A lot of times it's the first date if you're watching movies, and people haven't got that. There's that disconnect. They're not going, oh, this is fiction. They're going, oh, this is how it's done. That's so right. Movies have built the culture.
Yeah. And I think when you have sex with someone, you always leave a piece of yourself with that person. We used to do sometimes when I did sex ed talks, we used to do an exercise where we give people
a bar of chocolate.
No.
Oh, okay.
But that sounds like a good idea.
I'll tell you that one now.
Okay. We used to give them different color pieces of paper and glue, right? Pritt sticks. So stick them together, let them dry, and then when you pull them apart, you know, like if you got a green page and a pink page, you pull them apart, there's always a bit of one page stuck on the other, just to show them, just as an example, to say, look, when you have sex with someone,
this was a piece you left behind.
It's so intimate, like you leave a piece of yourself emotionally with that person, and you're going to leave pieces of yourself here, there, and everywhere.
It's true.
Like, you know, there's a fragmentation that starts to happen then.
It is. It's a good example, actually.
What's the chocolate one, Anthony? Do you like chocolate?
I know. That's the thing. So I remember going at our church, there was a guy who did a sermon, and he had a slab of chocolate. Okay. It was a brand new slab of chocolate.
Was it dairy milk?
And I think so, yeah. At that point, I didn't care. It was chocolate.
Do you have any there now? No.
I'm sorry. I'm trying to watch my sugar intake. Got to watch my figure. But some of us aren't married yet. Okay, we still got to try and look.
May
good.
God give you a good woman, Anthony.
Oh, Hopefully one day. But yeah, so he he takes the bar of chocolate and he opens it up and he basically hands it to the first person in the congregation, and it sort of gets passed along to a certain point, and then he goes, okay, and he goes, who's got the chocolate now? And he'd be like, oh, someone puts their hand up. And he goes, cool, can you bring it up? So he'll bring it up, leave it there, and he says, cool. And then he takes out a brand new bar of chocolate and he puts it there and he goes, now, who wants this one that's been used and been eaten from and been taken from, and who wants a brand new bar of chocolate? And they're like, well, we want the brand new bar of chocolate. And he goes, well, it's the same thing when you're having sex before marriage. It's like you're sleeping with all these different people. Every time you sleep with someone, is like there's a piece of that chocolate gone. And so to the point of where there's very little of that chocolate left. Yeah. But yet, when we're looking at it from a perspective of chocolate, straight away everybody wants to go for the brand new bar of chocolate because it hasn't been used, it hasn't been taken from. It's a full bar of chocolate. Yeah. But none of you wanted to take from the one that had been taken from. Yeah. Now, why do you think, if you're going to sleep around with a whole bunch of different people, that by the time you get to, whoever your marriage partner is, it's kind of like you've given so much of yourself away already. Yes. Not that we're saying you're not. I don't think he was trying to say that you're used and you're not worth anything.
No, absolutely not.
He's just saying, he was saying from a point of view, like any person would logically, from this bar of chocolate point of view, we tend to look at the chocolate that hasn't been taken from. It's the same thing for yourself. Don't give so much of yourself away so that by the time you get to this person, you have very little to give in the sense of that. And I thought it was pretty good.
And that's not to judge anybody who's listening, who's been sleeping around, who's had loads of sexual partners, even just a couple. It's not that. No. Because the grace of God, the blood of Jesus, cleanses us from that sin. And there's nothing specially bad about sexual sin either. We all sin, like everybody. So we're not sitting here saying we're great and you're not. That's not it at all.
I've never done that. I don't sin. I'm perfect.
You didn't even bring chocolate.
I'm far from it. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's my one sin.
but by the grace of God, we're made new, and that's the special thing. So don't sit feeling beaten up and guilty and in judgment. It's not that.
Well, I mean, I could speak from personal experience because I only became a Christian when I was 21. Okay. So I had a few years to do things. Yeah. So I by no means, and I think that was a thing for me as well. Before I became a Christian, I kind of thought when I then became one, it was very daunting for me, and it was very, I was apprehensive to date, and thinking, if this person ever finds out about my past, because obviously at this point I was like, I have done some stuff, and stuff's happened, and this was sort of pre-Christian years, and so I thought, well, okay, I'm a Christian now, but is this person going to understand? Yeah. Are they going to hold it against me? Yes. Like, I kind of knew, okay, from a God point of view, yes, He's not going to hold it against me. He's forgiven me. Yeah. But they're not God. Yeah. Still a human being. So what about
other people?
And so this person's going to be like, so I thought, so whoever it is that might have waited or held out, and that's great if they do. And if you can, great, you should do that. Absolutely. But for those that haven't, it's kind of like, is this person going to be okay with this? Are they going to accept me? So it can be tough. But I think at the end of the day as well, it is, I kind of looked at it at the end of I kind of got through it, and I looked at it from a point of view going, yes, that stuff's happened, but it's in the past. And if this person can't accept me for my past, my present, and hopefully my future, then, I mean, then that's their tough luck. Yeah. Because, no one's perfect anyway. No. Just because they haven't done some things I've done, they might have done other things that I haven't done. Yeah. So it's all relative in that sense. As you say, everybody sins, everybody falls short.
Everybody,
So there's definitely no judgment from my side, because I'm definitely not the first person who could throw that stone.
Yeah, but like none of us are, you know? None of us are.
But yeah, how much time we got left? Oh, we're almost done. Look at that. Party time. No, I'm just kidding. So I used to do them for the podcast for like an hour, and I figured we'd cut them down to 45 minutes. Cause
it's probably more listenable.
Yeah, 45 minutes is about an average. I was checking it out anyway. Because DJ was also telling me, like, you need to shorten your podcast. I'm like, don't tell me what to do, woman. No.
She's a good woman to listen to.
She is good. She helped me with the whole elephant in the room thing. I took credit for it, and then she came on and said, wait, didn't I come up with that? And I was like, oh, yeah. I was hoping you wouldn't say that on the thing.
DJ, you're great.
But so that's it. We're pretty much done. I just wanted to get that out there because I think for anybody, and I'm kind of aiming at, I mean, guys should be listening to this and going, yes, we do need to be more respectful. And also on the fact of, remember, what you're putting into your mind is going to come out in your actions.
Yeah, rubbish in, rubbish out.
Exactly. So if you're going to be a guy who, if you are addicted or stuck on watching pornography and putting that kind of stuff into your brain, you might think you're doing it in private and no one's seeing that you're watching this, and they're not seeing you do this. But it is going to come out in the stuff you say, how you act around anybody, and also specifically women, because women tend to have a very keen sense of that kind of stuff. It's almost like a sixth sense with you guys. I don't know, but you guys tend to pick up on, you might not exactly know what's going on, but you tend to pick up like something's not right yet.
Yeah, but also what you talked about earlier, the damage to the neuron pathways in the brain.
It's chemically damaging too. So
it is. I worked with a guy who had been addicted to pornography in counselling, and I learned so much from him, and it is frightening what he had gone through and the struggle to get away from it. I can imagine. It's because they were saying it's on the same level in terms of how your brain chemistry changes, on the same level as being addicted to heroin. And it's like, and I mean, that's not something you want to, get involved with. No.
So it's that side of it. Just be careful what you put into your brains. And this goes across the board for women too. Because I think women are watching this as well. And then from their perspective, they're getting one of two perspectives. Either one is like, I've got power here, or the second one is, I've got to do whatever he wants me to do kind of thing. Right. So you got to watch out for those as well. Yeah. And guys also have to realize that what they're watching, as much as it is really happening, it's still fictional in the sense of like the scenarios that are happening. So that's not real life.
No.
So you need to, and no is no. Someone says no, it's not, oh, she meant yes, and oh, I could see it in her eyes. Or what she was wearing was telling it no is no.
Yeah. Even if you're halfway through the act and she says no, that is no.
Because it also, to me, speaks of what measure of a man you are. How much respect, like if someone says no and you have that respect, or that if you're a man enough, because often guys go, like locker room talk, they like to say, the guy's like, oh, how many women I've slept with, and that gets translated as to what kind of a man, I'm the man. But no, it's the complete opposite.
Absolutely.
You're a man when you're able to A, control yourself, and B, respect the other person if they decide to say no. Right. That makes the measure of a man.
And of course, the other way around as well. If the man says no, then women, you stop.
Yeah.
And stop manipulating.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean,
it's not a weapon.
We've got Love Island on the TV at the moment, and I'm not watching it, but I'm tripping over headlines about it, and there was something similar there with a girl really trying to manipulate a guy, trying to get him to kiss her, and it's like, I didn't watch it, but it's like, leave him alone. I
heard about that actually. I think a few guys at work were talking about it.
Yeah,
and then someone was saying, and then someone was saying as well, if it was the other way around and the guy was trying to do that, everybody'd be up in arms about it.
Yes.
But because it's her, no one's really focusing on it. But that's not fair.
Yeah.
And I got a friend of mine who's a big fan of Love Island. She was trying to get another friend of mine to watch it. And I'm like, and then while she's saying, oh, Love Island's great, it's wonderful, she kind of had her back turned to her. And then when she looked away, I was kind of silently mouthing the words back to her, going, don't watch it. It's complete nonsense. And then she turns back and I'm like, oh, yeah. Like nodding like, oh, totally. And then she looks away again and I'm like, no, you don't want to watch that. It's complete nonsense.
Yeah.
So, you got to, there's all this stuff out there. But I hope this helps. I really do. Because I want people to feel, I want women to feel like they can say no.
Yeah.
And also to feel like, and I would say try and be a little bit more modest, but at the same time, don't feel like because you are wearing a certain outfit that you can't say no. Because you can. No is no, as we've established. Yeah. Guys, on the other side, if you do see someone who's dressed a certain way, yes, it might switch on a few things, but that also have enough decency, have enough dignity and self-control to say, yes, she's attractive, etc., whatever the thoughts are going through your mind, but be strong enough not to act on those thoughts and think that you can just go ahead and touch this person, because they're still their own person and you have no right to do that. So that's all I wanted to get across. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
If you have any thoughts or anything you want to comment on or something you want to get in touch with us, we do have an email address you can send to. It's whatyouthink2019@gmail.com. So it's spelt exactly like it's said. What you think 2019. So that's when we started the podcast.
Nice.
At gmail.com. And any thoughts? Maybe there's other topics you want us to talk about, or what was I going to say? Attack, but it's not attack. Approach. There we go. Any topics you want us to approach, and I'll be more than happy to do that. Well, thanks for coming in, and thanks for sharing. There was some really cool stuff you came up with there. I like that.
Cool.
And hopefully we'll get you back again sometime.
Great, love to. God bless you at home, lads.
Yeah. Cheers. Catch you later.